Last month, voters approved an amendment to the Oklahoma Constitution, State Question 764. It allows the Oklahoma Water Resources Board to issue up to $300 million in bonds for water projects. StateImpact Oklahoma's Logan Layden has been tracking the fallout from the new state law. I spoke with him about the law and how it could help small towns update their water infrastructure. Logan, the law has its roots in the Comprehensive Water Plan passed in 2011. Tell us more about that.
Well, actually, Oklahoma is kind of out ahead of a lot of other states with this water plan, as a lot of states in the Southwest face this drought over the next several decades. Oklahoma has this comprehensive water plan that basically the Water Resources Board put together to outline how Oklahoma would conserve water over the next 50 years or so and how they would use it. And unlike a lot of other state plans, some actual laws and changes are coming from this one. So.
The Water Resources Board has been giving out loans since the 1980s. What was the problem with the way they were doing that?
Well, it wasn't necessarily the process of it. It was the amount of money that they were able to back the loans up with. The state's credit, basically, is what's used to back these loans up. And as more and more water projects needed to be funded and as they became more and more expensive over time, that credit limit was just stretched too thin eventually, last year in fact, or earlier this year, and so some changes were needed.
How will this new financing program help small towns and their water needs?
Well, a lot of these small towns have, water needs that are extremely expensive, multi-million-dollar projects if you want to build a water treatment plant or a new water line from a reservoir to your town. And it's just, if they not only do they not have the kind of funds for that, they're not even able to go out and get the loans to get that amount of money because their credit isn't as good as the state's. Through this program, they're able to go through the state, use their credit, and get a much lower interest rate, saving millions over the course of the loans in many cases.
There are opponents to this plan, however.
There are, and it wasn't a real strong movement before the election in State Question 764 that the changes came from. But the main concern was basically this is putting these projects on the state's credit card, is how I've heard it put before. But if you look at the history of the programs, there have only been a couple of defaults over the last couple of decades, and 2,000 or so projects funded through this.
What are some of the projects for which they will be seeking funds?
Well, one of the ones that kind of took it to its limit was this project in Broken Arrow where they wanted to build a new water treatment plant, and so that kind of stretched it all the way to its limit. If you look at the list of projects, there are dozens of just drinking water projects that need to be funded and that want to be funded through this. I know of one in particular that's pretty large in Tecumseh to build a water line from West Watkins Reservoir to that town, which is a multi-million-dollar project that without the financing would be much more difficult for the town to do.
Are these short-term fixes, or are they looking more into the future as well?
They're looking more into the future as well. This is the whole plan behind 764 was to back the loans up with enough credit that they could fund the projects even in the years that they thought the most need would be happening. I think the OWRB estimated that in the year of most need, $3 billion will have to be funded through it. So that's where that number of $300 million came from, which is the amount of money that's backed up, that the state's credit is backed up.
How are small towns feeling about this program?
They're very pleased. Without it, even in the larger towns, when I talked to people in Broken Arrow, they were talking about how difficult it would be to fund this if it weren't through this program. So as the towns get smaller, this program becomes more important.
What will this do to the state's credit rating?
Well, that's to be seen. It will, of course, depend on whether or not projects default in large numbers or not. Certainly the history of the program says that won't be the case and that the credit rating won't suffer because of it, but it's hard to predict the future.
What is this expected to do long-term to Oklahoma's water plan? Is this a direction that Oklahoma is going to go, is to continue to focus resources on water?
It seems like it. One of the big priorities this legislative session, I think from the point of view of the Water Resources Board, is to get this Water 2060 Act passed, which is trying to make sure that we don't use any more fresh water in 2060 than we do today. Now that has a number of opponents, and we'll see what happens with it, but it's definitely a big priority and will continue to be so.
Logan Layden from StateImpact Oklahoma, thanks for the information.
Thank you.